I'd like to introduce Smitty, WB1G, new call sign. Excellent. You know, Smitty has a extensive background in broadcasting. He was a DJ at one time. He knows audio equipment. He's used a lot of audio equipment in his past. So I thought he would be an ideal person. So I asked him a couple months ago if he'd be willing to put together a presentation on audio in the shack, just to enhance what's already been done in the club in the past. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Smitty, and he's going to amaze us. Thank you, Smitty.
That was a fantastic intro, by the way, considering that Graydon actually, and I'll pull the curtain back and show the wizard here for a second. Graydon actually asked me for a bio. And I just realized right as you were doing that, Graydon, that I never gave you that. So I think that was as good as any intro I could ever ask for right there. I'm Smitty, WB1G, and yeah, as Graydon said, tonight's presentation is going to be about upping your audio game. Now, we're going to go through a whole bunch of different stuff. I took my approach at putting together this presentation was more of neutrality. And, you know, it's funny, after Graydon asked me, we were talking a little bit, and I found out that Bob Heil has presented to this group. And Bob Heil is, I've met Bob, like many of you have, and I looked up to Bob when I first got into amateur radio. And so to hear that I'm presenting a topic that he's already presented, my angle tonight was going to be to hit this from an angle of neutrality, where we're not talking about any specific products, because a lot of different products can get you better audio in the shack. What we're going to focus on today more is like audio on a budget. How can you up your game without spending $1,000? Truthfully, the setup that I'm on right now is about $1,000, but you don't need that necessarily to have good audio on the air. So a little bit about me overall and my background, just to give you a little bit. I started in radio in the mid-90s, and I was a country western DJ, spinning back to back hot country, 14 in a row. And that was when I was in college in the mid-90s, and did a little bit of college radio as well, but rather than on the air, I did more engineering for KCSC, which is no longer on the air, but that was the Chico State radio station. Then after, actually, while I was still in college, I got a job at Clear Channel, and that's when I started on air. And it wasn't long before I transitioned. At the time, their chief engineer was what we call in the industry a graybeard. And I don't know if that extends beyond the radio industry, but he was a graybeard. He was a very old guy and getting ready to retire and needed a young pup to take over. So I was studying electrical engineering in college. So I started apprenticing him, and ended up moving into his role. And so I worked as the chief engineer at the Clear Channel Radio Cluster up in Chico. That's where I got my start. It was a great market to do that too, given the market number, and learned how to do a lot with very little. And then in 2003, decided I wanted to make a little bit more money, to be perfectly honest. And I took a position as the IT manager and assistant to the chief engineer at iHeartRadio in Sacramento. And I worked there from 2003 to 2005, KFBK, KSTE, KGBY, and KHYL, and was lucky enough to work with some other great engineers. David Fortenberry, who was very loved in this club. He went silent key about a year plus ago, but Dave was one of my mentors, and I studied under Dave. So at any rate, I learned a few things really quick about audio. And that's that's where we really should start, right? Is audio is extremely subjective. What sounds good to Smitty may not sound good to Brian. It may not sound good to Greg or Jeff or whoever. So you really have to take feedback on audio with a grain of salt. And the hardest thing in this hobby that we're in is that you can't hear yourself. It's not like FM radio where I can put a set of cans on and hear the air monitor, and I can hear how I'm mixed with the music and everything like that. That's great. But in our world, most of you, now I know there are some radios, this icon in front of me allows you to monitor as you're speaking, and you get a really good idea there. But a lot of the radios that we use, even in our vehicles for that matter, there's no way to monitor off air. So you have to find somebody to work with overall. And I think one of the things that we don't do well as amateur radio operators is honesty. And I'll explain what I mean by that. There is a club member here. He may be in this group right now, AI6US, that is very honest when your audio is crap. And I think one of the things that you can do for your fellow amateur radio operators is be honest and call out bad audio. Now, bad audio isn't necessarily, someone's voice being a certain way or a certain pitch, not at all. But if you hear the guy on the air that's like this, he's talking and, and he sounds like he's on the other side of a room in a closet, maybe let him know, because the bottom line is that he may not know that he sounds like garbage. He may not know that he's working his mic too far away. And so that's kind of one of the first things that you need to kind of wrap your head around, right? Is to not be afraid to give feedback. And if there's a friendly way, of course, to give feedback, to let folks know, that their audio doesn't sound good. So what do you do if that audio doesn't sound good? Well, of course, this presentation is not about poo-pooing the hand mic. I use a hand mic in my vehicle. I used a hand mic in my shack here for a really long time, and a lot of them are great. A lot of you sound great on the air with your hand mic. But a lot of the nice stuff about being in a shack is having some portability. I'm Italian. I like to talk a lot with my hands. So for me, holding a hand mic doesn't work. I end up doing this, and you guys, you hear me drift off and everything like that. So I like a microphone that's, on a boom that needs to be greased, by the way, but a mic that's on the boom and that allows you to talk, whether you're doing maybe you're doing FT8 or maybe you're logging things. You've got your hands free. And then, of course, I have remote push to talk, and we'll go into that setup and good ways to kind of make a remote foot pedal or even a trigger for your hand or something like that. We'll go into a couple different ways that you can execute on that. So about audio, what did Smitty learn very early in his career? Well, not early in my career, actually, but what did I learn when I brought what I knew from FM radio into the world of amateur radio is that processing music and audio with 15 kilohertz of bandwidth is a whole lot different than trying to process audio for 3 kilohertz. Extremely difficult, or extremely different rather. And the one thing that I struggled with, and even to this day, if you come from broadcast radio, whether you are on air, whether you're an engineer, you like to shove 40 pounds of beans in a 20-pound sack. That is the goal in radio. You want that audio to literally modulate off the dial and penetrate someone's eardrum, right? And that's not what we do here. So always think to yourself, less is more. That's one of the things that you have to kind of keep in mind. Also, be careful with audio gain and compression. You may sound great on your local radio. Matter of fact, if you have the ability to monitor yourself as you transmit, you may think, I sound fine or this and that. But I have learned that very many repeaters out there, and I will say W6CK is sensitive to this, of over deviation on the audio. So you have to be very careful that your audio may be good, it may be perfect modulation, but you may go from one repeater to another. And on W6CK, you're perfect. On, another repeater, you're soft, or not soft necessarily, but you're not going to sound exactly the same on every machine. So you have to find a good common ground, and you don't have to be the loudest and proudest station on the air. Now, quite frankly, I'm looking at this right now with the glasses of FM. On AM and single sideband, of course, there's a little bit different of a game, but we'll touch upon that here as well as we kind of forge forward. Okay, so the forever great debate: microphones. There are millions of microphones out there. Which one is the best? And I'm going to tell you from my experience in 25 years of broadcasting, my best microphone, the best microphone out there is the microphone for you. Everybody's voice is different. Everybody has a different tone. Everybody works microphones different. Different microphones have different responses and different roll-offs. Clearly, not all these mics you're looking at on screen right now, they don't have the same roll-off. They don't have the same pattern. A few of them are dynamic mics. A couple of them are condenser mics. They all have different properties and different ways that they produce sound. So what is a good mic for VO, which is the mic I'm on right now? That would be the Shure SM7B, the one all the way to the right, mic number 4. It's a great broadcast and VO mic. It's got a great full range. It has more of a V curve. So you've got more pronounced lows and highs, not quite as of boosted mid-range. Not the best mic for HF, to be perfectly honest with you. Being a new HF operator, I tried this mic and I didn't like its sound on HF. So I brought another one in. Why not? You can never have too many microphones, right? It's my HF mic. This is my FM mic. And at any rate, let's talk a little bit about the microphones that I've got in front of you right now. They have different price points, right? We've got on the left, the very popular microphone number one, the Heil PR40. I love this microphone. I don't own one anymore, but I did for a long time. Great mic, a very poor mic for popping peas. Now, we get that in amateur radio all the time. You know, the person that, they're blowing into their mic, and that does continue on into this realm as well. So the PR40, for example, doesn't have the greatest filters on the front. So you want to often use the windscreen with those if you're going to use them on amateur radio. Microphone number two is an Audio Technica, an AT2020. It's more of a budget-friendly mic. This is really popular with podcasters. It has more of a pronounced mid-range. Mic number three, $450. That's actually this one right here. Very popular in the broadcast industry. I'm sure you've seen an interview from a radio studio with that exact mic. It's extremely popular. That's the EV RE20 mic. And I don't like this mic on air. I used that mic on air for many, many years when I was in Chico, and I hated it. It has a very pronounced mid-range, and it rolls off the bass and it rolls the highs a little bit, more of a roll off on the low end. And I don't have that much low in my voice. It's more mid timbre. So I just didn't like it. It just didn't feel as radio-y. I don't know if that's the right word, but, and then last but not least, this is my favorite mic. So this is the Smitty favorite mic is the Shure SM7B. That's this guy right here. Different windscreen in the picture, but same microphone. And so these microphones, and I think the one thing I want to point out, they will operate differently on your amateur radio, but not to the point where my $400 microphone is going to sound any different for most people on the air than the $100 microphone. So cost does not mean in our realm that it's a good mic. And that it's good for, a mic that's good for you is good for you. What's good for the pocketbook is also good for you. So let's look at a couple different things. You heard me say, does it really matter which microphone we're using? I mean, yes and no. It really depends if you're going to use your microphone for anything beyond amateur radio, or if you plan on just using it on the air, you may find that a budget-friendly mic like the AT2020 will do just fine. You should know, though, before you can plug any of these microphones into a radio, there's something very important to note. All of these microphones have different pickups and different gain thresholds for what they need in order to produce a linear gain or to produce, the word has escaped me, in order to produce the right amount of gain for your radio. There, let's leave it there. And so a few of these microphones you cannot plug directly into your radio. For example, the Shure SM7B, the microphone I'm on right now, has a 60 decibel pad preamp in front of it. And so this microphone is a very poor choice unless you have a really good mic preamp or you have an audio processor, which I have in line here. I have a Symmetrix 520, which is a broadcast processor. But if you have to have a processor, you have to have enough gain on the input to make that work so that you can get, a linear level or a line level or even a balanced level of like +4 out of the microphone. Whereas, for example, the AT2020, the budget mic, microphone number 2, plus 6 to plus to 18. So that microphone actually will do quite well. And in fact, the RE27 does an okay job on my HF rig. However, on my HF rig, this microphone right here, I need to actually go because I have this one wired differently than what I'm going to show tonight. I have to actually have my mic gain at like 90% to get good audio through this, again, because it needs a lot of gain. And it truly, none of these microphones, maybe with the exception of the Heil PR40, are truly designed for amateur radio use, but they get the job done. So just keep gain in mind. And there's another factor here as well. Some microphones need phantom power. Phantom power is simply 48 volts. And there are some microphones that allow you to put a battery in them. But more or less, the microphones we're talking about tonight, some of the condensers that exist out there, many of the condenser mics that exist out there require phantom voltage, 48 volts. And so you need to have something between the microphone and the radio to get the proper attenuation that you need into your radio. All right, moving forward. You've got the gear. Now let's pipe in that audio. So I did a little bit of a project about a year ago. This is the Smitty built breakout box. And I originally started in my shack with a Yaesu. I started with the Yaesu 8900 that had good finals, by the way. Sorry, Jeff. And I still have that radio. That's actually what I have in the mobile. And then I upgraded to an FTM 300, and I also have an ICOM 9700. But the FTM 400, or pardon me, the FTM 300 and the Yaesu came with some challenges as far as getting audio in and getting good sounding audio into the interface. So I built this little thing right here, and I bring this up because this, not that you necessarily need this. There's a number of different ways you can get audio into your radio, but I want to give you some inspiration. Maybe you operate a mobile as base. I know a lot of us do. How do I get this microphone game on my mobile radio? So in this case, what I ended up doing is I went to good old Amazon and I bought a really cheap MH480 or 48 microphone, a Yaesu microphone, and I made that. Actually, to be honest, I bought two. One of them I messed up. Never hurts to have an extra to learn on. And the second one I ended up using for this project, and located the pinout. And you may say, well, Mike, Smitty, why did you choose to keep the microphone? Well, I wanted DTMF and I didn't want to put a keypad. I wanted my box to be small enough. And sometimes, to be quite frank with you, I just like to grab the hand mic and use the push to talk on it. So it still gives you that ability, that feeling of holding the mic in your hand, but using a different microphone for that matter. So I still have DTMF control with this project and also push to talk on it. But what I did is I bought just a little black project box. I've got the prices on the next slide, in fact. But I bought a little black plastic box, junction box, and the top is just a standard toggle switch. You can get that at Home Depot or Lowe's. The bottom one is a momentary latch switch. So yeah, I labeled them, lazy switch and launch missiles. And then on the back side of the device, I put two phono plugs, and one is push to talk and one is audio in. And then inside that box, of course, is a soldering mess. A lot of you know I'm an excellent soldering guy. I'm fantastic with the soldering iron. And so I did, take great care in making this box. But inside, all I did was break out the cable, broke out the pinout. And I broke off, for example, I think it's like the red wire. I broke off ground. I broke off push to talk positive. I broke off audio. And then I just terminated them and soldered them and shrink tubed them and everything like that. It's not the prettiest in there, I'll admit, but it does work. And that's going to give you the ability just to be nimble in your shack. So sometimes I may want to reach over and launch a few missiles, or maybe I want to use a push to talk pedal. At the end of the day, it's a really affordable way to build yourself or build your own breakout for your mobile radio. And I charge a nominal fee to make these, by the way. No, I'm kidding. But I do have the wiring diagram if it's helpful to you. So here's my parts list real quick here. Like I mentioned, the DTMF microphone and project box, latching toggle switch, momentary latch switch, and 2 1/4-inch TRS tip ring sleeve female surface mount connectors. And priced, you can see, we're not talking about an expensive parts list by any sense of the imagination. So the one thing I will caution is if you decide to, for example, if you decide to plug in a microphone directly into this box, it is going to work. If it's the proper mic, if it doesn't require 60 dB of gain, it will work. But you do want to be careful that there's no current or no current coming back. Because of course that microphone, they're sending a certain amount of voltage to light the lights. So you just want to be cautious in that sense. And what I'm going to show tonight won't require that, but you just want to make sure that your radio isn't supplying voltage on any of those pins, primarily the audio pin in this example, or you're going to end up with noise, or you're going to end up with perhaps a shorted microphone or something to that nature. So let's talk about the parts that you would need to up that audio game, right? All right. So there's my breakout box on the right. As you can see, I went ahead and grabbed the AT2020 because I wanted to show you on a budget, what can you do? And in fact, I should mention, while that AT2020, it's a brand name, or it's, it's an Audio Technica mic, it's a fantastic mic. There are options that are cheaper than $100. So you don't necessarily need to spend $100. But again, good middle of the road microphone. In the middle, we've got a Behringer 502 mixer. It's a good mixer. It does the job just fine. This also allows you'll notice right here, that white knob here, right with that channel 1 right there, that's going to give you about 40 dB of gain. So if you choose to use a microphone that does require a lot of gain, there's where your gain control is to make sure that your mic level is good. And then that bottom dial in channel 1, that's where you're going to adjust your modulation or your attenuation of your audio. That's going to go to the radio for that matter. So this gives you a lot of control. It also allows you the ability, any of these extra channels, both channel 2 and channel 3 right here, they're stereo, but of course in this diagram, I'm going to show it's going to be all left channel mono. But at any rate, they're stereo, but you can plug in your laptop audio card if you want. It's also good to note that if you buy this with USB, so there's the model without USB, which is pictured. There's the model with USB, that's $59. It is a sound card. So it will work just like your ICOM 7300 on your PC. When you do FT8, it'll show up just like that as an audio interface. And quite frankly, it's a damn good sound card for $59. Really good sound card. And I love them because coming from the broadcast space, I worked with balanced audio with XLRs and with +4, and this allows you to keep that audio balanced all the way to the radio, really. All right, so let's forge forward. Wiring diagram, pretty darn easy. Microphone to mic jack, right? Adjust your gain. That's the first thing. Do that with a set of headphones. Don't even get it wired to your radio yet. Just plug it in, take a listen, see how it sounds. Play with the EQ a little bit. Yeah, that EQ is going to pass through all the way to the radio. So don't be overly aggressive. Remember, less is more. Once you've got things dialed in the way you want them, you run, this is the main audio out. You can pick a side, pick any side, left or right, because you're just going to run this in mono. We run main out right here, it looks like, into the audio input of our breakout box. And then if we want to get really fancy, and yes, I do this as well, we go ahead and we bring the audio back from the radio into channel 2. So that's going to give us the ability to go ahead and monitor it's going to give you the ability to monitor your QSOs. And so essentially you can use this mixer as both the input into your radio, and also, after you let go of push to talk, channel 2 comes live and you're listening to the audio coming back from your radio. So quite functional. I mentioned earlier the breakout box, and of course there are other solutions other than that breakout box. That's a pretty affordable method, but if you added up all the prices, or rather all the dollars that I spent for the parts, there are just off the shelf really great products. In fact, shameless plug for HRO, because I bought a couple of these myself. For my ICOM 7300, this is actually what I'm using. I think it's the first model, but High Elf Sound, shameless plug for High Elf Sound and shameless plug for HRO, do a wonderful job with these cables. They have isolation built into them, which is fantastic. So no current coming back on the mic side of it. They also break out push to talk and a 1/4-inch connector for you. So if you don't want to build a project box like that, again, I did it for the experience. I did it to have a launch missiles button and to have fun like that. But you can buy an off-the-shelf product like this, and a cord, or rather a cable and a breakout like this, is going to cost you anywhere from $30 to $40. They range in price a little bit, but a great way to essentially get to the same end goal. And I should mention too, I've got one of these on my 7300, and I actually have one on my 9700. The breakout's actually for the Yaesu. But the great thing is, that's a balanced connector. So you quite literally can plug that with that mixer I showed earlier. You would need a 1/4-inch to XLR adapter, which are extremely cheap on Amazon. But with like a studio style mixer or an audio processor, you're going to have XLR out. You quite literally can plug that right into the radio, which is kind of cool. And so, yeah, you can pick your flavor. You can see they make one for Yaesu, they make Kenwood pinouts, they make ICOM pinouts. Great cable, and it's extremely good quality as well. So a solution for you. We're amateurs. We like to build our own stuff, right? But in case you don't, and you just want to get on the air and you don't want to take that time, you have that solution. All right, so we've got the ins taken care of for this point, right? We know how to get it in. Now let's get it out, right? buy yourself a pair of speakers. If you're using your radio speaker, you are doing yourself a disservice. There are millions of great affordable speaker options on the left right here. Logitech makes, this is just Logitech, but there are dozens of examples that you can find on the good old Amazon. I'm also a big fan of Fostech Sound. They make a really nice monitor speaker that you can use. We use these in the broadcast industry a lot. Typically we'll put them in racks, and they are very true to the sound they produce. Not too much bass, not too much treble, pretty much flat, and give you a nice volume control and additional gain on your radio. And so if we go back just a couple slides here, you would take that speaker. I didn't actually show a picture of that, but that speaker on the back of it has 1/4 inch or XLR. So in this model, you could use either the left channel here, this main out that's not being used, or you could even use the headphone jack. That would be appropriate, but probably the balanced audio jack is going to be better since that is a balanced input speaker. And so you'd have a true balanced audio source. Of course, if we're following the air chain all the way through, coming out of the radio, it's 1/8 mini jack and it's unbalanced. But for the most part, you're going to keep things clean. And this is also going to help keep RF out of your audio path, because that's not good, as we know. All right, back to our speakers. So I mentioned Logitech, I mentioned Fostech. That Fostech 6301 is, again, a great speaker choice for getting nice, rich audio out of your radio and giving you the ability to, to monitor and to have a better sounding shack, for that matter. Listen, there is one more piece to bring up here about this. And again, you need a friend to help you. Brian actually helped me when I got my ASU on the air. He's got a very good ear, and he'll tell you when your audio sucks. But if you need help, I can be available, and I will offer my services to anyone that wants them. Now, you're like, come on, man. Audio is subjective, right? But what I can do is I can record you off air and send you an audio file, an uncompressed audio file. Again, it's 3 kilohertz, so it can be compressed, but I'll send you an audio file of what you sound like on the W6EK repeater. So you have a really good sense of that. And then you can make adjustments and we can interact and work like that. So I love doing that kind of stuff. I love audio. I'm still an audiophile. I run a radio station these days. And so again, if you'd like help or you'd like time, hit me up on the repeater or hit me up an email, wb1g@arrl.net, and we could set up a time to get on air. I'll record you, or I'll record our QSO. And then you'll have a great idea of how you sound overall, and give you some tweaks on, and maybe a little bit more treble, a little less treble, a little more bass, a little less, a little more mid. So again, congratulations, Ray. And I will give it back to you, Jeff, I guess, right?
Yeah. You know what? That was fantastic. Graydon, did you have any follow-up?
Well, I was just do we want to open it up for questions for a few minutes?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Questions.
Comment if I could.
You got it. Come on in.
Yeah. Okay. One thing I appreciate what you made mention about, Smitty, is being honest in signal reports. If the audio's bad, tell them about it. I just did the winter field day not too long ago, and by the end of Saturday, even though I made some contacts, someone told me, as long as your signal is pretty strong, you've got it. But as soon as conditions become marginal, you don't have the punch in your audio. So kind of as a wake-up call, and it's a Elecraft KX3 QRP radio. So it's got an equalizer in it. So Saturday night, took it home and retweaked it and played with it and got the frequency response back to where it was. And then Sunday went out and got some better reports. So it's...
I had a ICOM 756 Pro 3 and a Heil PR40. And if you just follow their directions on the website, I got nothing but compliments on my audio with that. I mean, totally.
Good.
And Evan, you're right. You just have to, you don't know what you sound like. And people that sound bad on the air may not know they sound bad on the air. People that eat the mic may not know that they sound bad on the air. Maybe no one, or maybe someone's too shy to say something. I sometimes am. I'm guilty of that. Yeah, definitely do that to your fellow ham radio. And there's a good, delicate way to say it without sounding like a total prick. Yep, I'll say it.
Yeah, so
Smitty?
that's what worked out.
I felt that Smitty was pointing at me, but I don't know.
I have a question.
Oh, you did a very eloquent way. And again, you can't hear yourself. So how do you know?
No, running,
Somebody
I'll
told
just
you.
say running a net is so difficult because of the wide variety of different audios. And, we've had people check in the morning, like I'm not calling anyone out, but one guy who rides in a truck, all we heard was truck noise. And, it was one of those things we couldn't really enjoy a great conversation because we were hearing background noise as well. I was just going to mention that microphone you're holding. The reason I like that is it's not a large condenser, it's a medium condenser,
Yes.
and it really does nice things for the voice range.
It
And
does.
so that microphone, even though it isn't the most expensive mic, man, it's good for the value.
It really is. And I may even have a shock mount like what Brian has. Yep, that's Brian's right there. Brian's mic. Yep, C1 right there. So this is yours, Ray. But yeah, and you can do exactly what Brian did. I may even have a mic stand for you, Ray, that I can throw into the mix as a starter package. But you may want a boom, like Brian, for example, or like me. As Brian has shown, he's got his on a shock mount, which is also pretty helpful. Go ahead, Greg. I'm sorry. You were in there. KO68.
No, that's a really good point there. But back to what Evan was saying about punch. Bob Heil made a really big point. One of his focus things was on 2,500, 2,700 hertz. It's a certain frequency you want to bump up in the middle to be. Is that what we're talking about here?
Yeah, 2,500 hertz is around mid-range, vocal mid-range. And so, yeah, that's absolutely for amateur radio. And that's why I mentioned this one does not boost 2,500 hertz. In fact, it dips it, whereas this one does boost it. So on HF, I use this one because it balances my voice out, and it takes that you're exactly right, that 2.5 kilohertz and boosts it up, and it's more of a mountain instead of a valley.